Hiya guys, taking a leaf out of James Hargreaves' book today, and we are talking about Oasis. And hopefully this will add on to James Hargreaves' knowledge of the band. Well, not knowledge, but he probably knows everything. But this will hopefully add on that missing piece, because I don't think he has visited the Sawmills. He has done documentaries on Oasis at Rockfield, where they recorded their sophomore album, What's the Story, Morning Glory. But no, there's no mention of Sawmills, only the Monnow Valley sessions, which were the Fort sessions that were rejected by Creation Records before they made their way down to Cornwall in the West Country. So hopefully this will fill in some vital missing history from James's channel. And I do follow your channel, mate, so keep it up. As always, shoegaze is my first thing, the shoegazing dream pop stuff, but Britpop has always been there as well, and just indie rock in general, British indie rock. I'm really on board with the Take Back the Charts campaign, which James has thoroughly put a lot of effort into. The Brits and Pieces thing compilation looks really good. So from visiting the Sawmills in February of 2024, this is a bit of history from certain sources, certain books, Paolo Hewitt books, David Cavanagh and Alan McGee's book, but also just a bit of showing how the Sawmills is these days, what it looks like. There's no real evidence of who's recorded here apart from the pictures on the wall and the album covers, but there's no I didn't find any sneaky plectrums laying around or Rennie's drum snare anywhere. So yeah, hopefully this is a bit of coverage for you and a bit of maybe unknown Oasis history, and this is going right back to the Definitely Maybe era, and it's about the recording of that, so enjoy. Mad for it. First opened in 1974, Sawmills is, as of this writing, one of the longest running residential recording facilities in the UK, located near the village of Gollant and Foy in Cornwall. The main building that houses the studio is a former 17th century watermill, and the site has documented history dating all the way back to the 11th century. Sawmills is not only historic, it's also unique in that it can only be accessed only by boat, or, if the tide is out, by a 2-mile walk down the railway line that runs behind the studio. The studio was founded by folk rock record producer Tony Cox, who also worked with Yes on their 1970 album Time and a Word. Cox was a frequent client at Sound Technique Studio in London, and at one point someone jokingly commented that he had been spending so much time there he might as well buy his own studio. Apparently this struck a nerve with Cox, and he duly began scouting for possible locations. The Cornwall property that he eventually settled on had been previously owned by Welsh author Dennis Val Baker. It was described by drummer Alan Eden, who was in the band that was in pre-production rehearsals with Cox at the time, as being an old building situated in splendid isolation on the bank of the River Foy. However, Eden reports the structure was also in a somewhat diplomatic state, with only half a roof and no windows. Tony, however, decided it was totally unique, had grace and charm, and promptly set the wheels in motion to purchase it. Although some questioned the producer's decision to open a studio in such an inaccessible location at the time, it was becoming increasingly fashionable for artists to escape to the countryside to record their next masterpiece. Not only were bands making records in makeshift barns and cottages all over the UK, like Richard Branson's Manor in Oxfordshire and Rockfield Studios in South Wales, they were offering fully professional recording facilities in rural surroundings with considerable success. Tony Cox's vision was to set up an in-house production team, complete with house bands as Motown, Stax and Muscle Shoals Studios had done in America. The incoming production work, he hoped,
would generate the income required to build the facilities and at the time create a relaxed environment conducive to making music. His first task was to hire someone to oversee the construction of the studio and installation of its equipment. Fortunately, Sound Factory's chief engineer, Jerry Boys, someone with whom Cox was already well acquainted, was available. Having recently decided to relocate to Cornwall, it was a perfect match. Not only did Boys have all the required technical skills, he also brought his own client base, and so he was promptly brought on board as chief engineer. The Sawmills control room was initially outfitted with a 20x4 Sound Techniques mixing console, a 3M M79 16-track recorder, and assorted Studer 2-track tape machines, and custom tannoy monitors. Outboard gear consisted of a Fairchild 660 compressor, an example of a very Mu compressor, 4 ADR parametric equalizers, 2 A&D stereo limiters with built-in noise gates, and an AKG BX20 spring reverb. Microphones included models from Neumann U47, U67, U87 and U88, AKG C12A tube condensers, as well as D12, D190, D224 and D202 dynamics. In 1986, a 56x24 Trident Series ATB with mix automation replaced the Sound Techniques board. At the time of this writing, it was still in use at the studio, and John Cornfield and John Leckie have used it heavily since the 90s. They also use Yamaha NS10 monitors. In David Cavanagh's book, The Creation Records Story, My Magpie Eyes Are Hungry for the Prize, it states, Noel Gallagher had brought to Abbey Road a tape of Oasis's debut album, which they had been recording in Wales, Monnow Valley, which is a studio located right next to Rockfield Studios in South Wales. Rockfield would be where the band would record their sophomore album, What's the Story, Morning Glory. He wasn't happy with it at all. Noel's impulsive decision to work with the former Inspiral Carpet sound mixer, Dave Batchelor. Noel Gallagher was a roadie for Inspiral Carpets previously, before joining Oasis, had backfired when Batchelor insisted on recording all the instruments separately, sluicing the coarseness from the Oasis sound. Alan McGee, the man who signed Oasis in middle of 1993, less than a year before attempting to record Definitely Maybe, the head of Creation Records. We were losing the spirit of the demo, says McGee. We scrapped it at 50 grand. I went off and told Jeremy Pierce. To be fair to Jeremy, he took it on the chin. Oasis started again at Sawmills, with Mark Coyle, their live sound engineer at the time, producing, and Anjali Dutt mixing. Anjali Dutt worked on My Bloody Valentine, Swerve Driver, a lot of Creation Records shoegazing material. And this time they recorded together as a group, so no instruments were separate. It was all going to be the band together playing all at the same time in one room. One band not yet seen as crucial by Sony, who were the major label that struck a 49% to 51% deal with the independent Creation in 1992, was Oasis. They began phase 3 of their album in May, giving the Mark Coyle and Anjali Dutt tapes recorded at the Sawmills to Owen Morris, a man who would work on all of the 90s Oasis albums and really provide that big wall of sound. And he was a protege of Marcus Russell, the Oasis manager from Wales, to undertake a thorough remix. It was now almost a year since Alan McGee had discovered the band. However, Oasis had in a relatively short space of time become the music critics' idea of what an exciting rock and roll group should be. And this was solidified when, during the mixing of Definitely Maybe, the Amsterdam incident happened, where Oasis were deported and sent back to England after a massive brawl on a ferry where Liam Gallagher went out of control, and that was where the sibling rivalry interview was recorded, where Noel is having a big rant against Liam, trying to explain that it wasn't rock and roll to do that, and Noel would much rather just play the gig. Alan McGee replied to that incident with just one word: brilliant. After their own sellout tour for Supersonic, Oasis's first single, Oasis continued to play around the country in May, immediately beginning a third tour at the start of June. Meanwhile, Owen Morris and Noel Gallagher had completed the final mix of the album that Tim Abbott from Creation Records was already predicting would be a never mind the bollocks for the 90s. Recording engineer Anjali Dutt says, "We started again as soon as we arrived in Sawmills. The decision had been made at Olympic, and anyway, I think Mark Coyle was itching to get his hands on it. Noel and Mark Coyle must have whiled away hundreds of roadie hours on the road, perfecting their vision of the ultimate rock sound, and the chance to flesh it out in a real studio, away from the constrictions of budget and criticism, was finally in their hands. Plus, I was the endlessly helpful and acquiescing engineer without any mandate other than to allow the creative juices to flow, hopefully straight onto that tape, so they were quids in there. It was a lovely atmosphere. They were in control of the sound, and they were also aware of the buzz awaiting the material if they could just nail it. Sawmills had a calming and productive atmosphere. It is halfway up a tidal creek, so cut off twice a day from even pedestrian access. Sometimes you could only get out by boat. We could go out canoeing for fun, and did eventually, with hilarious results. Also, you had to take the boat to the pub and bring back barrels of beer to fuel the night sessions, if that was what you wanted. Across the creek were trees and birds, and there was woods all around you. A lovely vibe, miles from anything, and especially far from urban Manchester and corporate London. From both management and record company, there was someone there they weren't particularly keen on, and they were far from him too. The mixes are still great to me, from the Sawmills. I still enjoy listening to them. They were tidy, focused and immediate. I liked the way you felt yourself drawn in, and they were sonically warm. Another way of describing them could be staid and polite, but I guess that didn't bother me, as I thought that the songs had a quality of their own, and I liked the understatement. I hadn't seen them live, so I guess it wasn't as evident to me as to others that the full personality of the band hadn't been captured. When I did see them on The Word, I did notice that they were more different from the Beatles than they may have wanted to be. Perhaps other angles should have been explored. Though I don't think that the original mixes were amazing, I did prefer them to the final album, as the relentlessness of the compressed chainsaw guitars just wears you out, even if the initial feeling of excitement is invigorating. But personally, I would disagree. I think I really like the chaotic wall of sound that Owen Morris got. But that's my personal opinion. It was all quite mysterious, the way it all got whisked away, but I was used to everything being brilliant one minute, but then suddenly remixed the next, as it happens quite often in the music business. Anyway, Marcus Russell managed Owen Morris, so perhaps there was some monetary recoupment angle there. The trouble was that you did feel very connected and committed to the work, and initially I think everyone agreed that the original mixes were the best, and it was a terrible travesty that the baby had been taken away. I think Owen Morris's mixes did the job, and it gave it that much needed excitement and attitude, but it wasn't my kind of sound, and found it far too abrasive, so I can only recall ever playing a few tracks at a time. It sounded great if it came on the radio or a jukebox, as you were walking down the street or drinking in a club, as it grabbed your attention, and it was just a clear winner in terms of loudness. In an intimate setting though, it was too dense for reflective thought. I suppose as a girl, this had always been my main area of fascination with music, those moments indoors with your records and introspection. However, he managed to make it sound dirty and dangerous rather than pompous and overbearing, so full marks for that. It reeked of attitude and defiance. I liked the intro to Bring It On Down with the tribal toms and the sneer of cigarettes and alcohol, but otherwise, from a long-term point of view, would have happily lived my life with the original mixes as my soundtrack. The finished version of the album was one of the first to be mastered using the brickwall method, which maximised its loudness. Owen Morris recalls that this meant that for the first year, Oasis came to pub jukeboxes louder than everybody else. The loudness bothers me a lot. I like the overall character of the mixes, and if, prior to mastering, the sonic profile had been a bit warmer and the dynamics more open, it might have been more appealing to me at any rate. It is all in your face straight away, lacking subtlety, to put it mildly. But at the same time, the opening seconds of a track, when it comes on, when your whole body and soul perks up with recognition and love almost immediately, are priceless. And it's quite ironic, really. I mean, surely since she worked on My Bloody Valentine, Loveless with Alan Moulder, I can't believe that she actually complains of the loudness and the huge scale of the wall of sound. Yeah, I mean, surely My Bloody Valentine would have been just like that as well. So I find that quite odd, but that's Anjali Dutt's thoughts. And that is from the Oasis recordinginfo.co.uk page. Yeah, wicked. Look at the piano.
Another carbon there.
Yeah.
It's just storage in there.
With Rennie's snare drums in there or something, is it?
Probably.
Welcome to the Sawmills.
That one. Where's that? You see? That's
No.
twice.
Alright.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm only doing that. Hopefully.
Nice red Rick, isn't it, that one?
Lovely, mate.
Yeah, beautiful stuff. I might have to duck for this. Pretty tall lad, isn't I? I'm gonna have to duck. It looked lower, like, from back there.
Yeah, that's better.
There it is.
Start to walk in. Lovely.
Yeah. Where legends have stood.
That was a bit of a bad one. I was a bit embarrassed.
Cheers.
Oh, you're all right.
So there you go, guys. That was my visit to the Sawmills on February the 25th, 2024.
And next up, a Verve, Storm in Heaven, the debut album, which was also recorded there. So look out for that one. I want to get an interview with John Cornfield, the engineer who worked on that album. So as soon as I can get that, then I can insert that into the video, and it will be finished and ready for you guys to watch. James Hargreaves just hit 50k subs on his channel, so I hope he enjoys this video and sees it. So yeah, for next time, take care guys.